Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com.
This is our on-farm slaughterhouse. We call it a wash house because we use it not only to process our own meats, but also during maple syrup season, the sink helps. It's a nice place to wash up. It's a nice place to come in with muddy boots and get a cup of coffee if I decide to. So I was a meat cutter for a number of years, and we made do with setting up in the garage. This was a lot better choice. Most of what you see, I bartered for the cement block and the floor. The wood that built the structure was logged right here on the property out of some white pine trees. I have an Amish friend that helped me do the steel work and most of the framework. We have less than $10,000 in this building. And it's a 16 by 30 building. I made the ceilings high so that we can, though we butcher outside, we hang the carcasses in here overnight. The equipment we purchased over time through different people and friends, Craigslist. The saw I had for a number of years, and it was a old man's craft saw, but it's actually a meat saw, and we repurposed it. So I was able to buy it. Everything in here just about pennies on the dollar. The crown jewel in here for me is this pizza oven that I repurposed into a smokehouse. So we can get 2 racks of meat in here to cook, one on each side, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you butcher 3 pigs, that's 6 hams, 6 bacon, some shoulders, and before you know it, you're loaded full. The problem I had, I couldn't get the temperature hot enough in here to make ready-to-eat meat. So I overcame that by a $50 garage sale oven. I cut a hole in the side of the oven and I let gravity heat take the heat from the oven into the smokehouse. The smokehouse has internal fans that keep the air circulating. I can't really go by this temperature because I have to set it hotter to get it the right temperature inside. But it works very well, very functional, and we make just about 95% of all the smoked meats we eat here on the farm. We have an array of things that make the job easier. We have a meat slicer, and this, of course, is a meat stuffer. So we stuff all of our sausage, including bologna and wieners, and that's very helpful. We also have a, now, I don't know, this is a mixer, a little batch mixer, and a bowl chopper for making bologna and wieners to give you the emulsion that you need for the meat. This area we use to wrap everything. My wife, she's my meat wrapper, and she takes care of mixing all of our spices. We have our own recipes that we've had for 25 or 30 years, and so we buy spices and sugars and so forth at the bulk food store, and then my wife mixes them all here. So same way, we control how much monosodium glutamate, which would be 0, and a lot of other stuff that we choose not to eat. This is what I like to do with the moms. So mom's in here, and the babies can go underneath this board, so I can feed the babies where mom can't get it. These guys have just a few more days with mom, and then they'll be weaned. They've already been castrated and wormed, and they're eating good on their own. So some of them will stay on our farm, and some of them will go to other people's farms. This is a little Berkshire mom in her first litter, but she's been a terrific mother. She farrowed underneath the overhang in February 25th. I think 2 days after they were born, it was 5 degrees, and she had 9, raised 8.
So they're almost a month old right now.
They are 7 weeks, I think, right?
February, no?
Oh, no, my bad. January 25th.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're just about 7 weeks. They'll be 8 weeks this weekend.
Okay.
And you're certainly welcome to come down the line. This is a hamp boar in with one of the gilts we saved. She's a replacement gilt. And these are just feeder pigs that are kind of jammed in here because we can't get outside yet. Everybody's nervous because they get 2 play times every day outside. They get to run around for 30 minutes. So even in wintertime, they're getting a full recess, but normally they're outside. As soon as the weather gets better, out they go. This pond is part of our water quality incentives that we try to do here on the farm. And we catch any runoff that would come off the farm, which we get very little, but any what would come would have to come to this pond first and then work its way through the wetland off to the east side here. It overflows into this small creek. When we came here, this wasn't a dedicated stream bed. This was just a big, oozy, muddy pit. So we did a lot of interference, I guess, but for the good cause. You'll see that I leave grass grow in the stream bed. All of that helps with filtering the water. We get very little water other than sometimes muddy from the cow footprints, but other than that, we don't worry about chemical runoff or anything because we don't use them. Manure is a little bit of a concern, but we compost 98% of our manure as well. This stream then winds its way through, and you'll see another culvert over farther. It's actually a culvert across one of our sap roads. And then it dumps into a 10-acre wetland before it goes into Mill Creek. Obviously, we're down in here in the worst part of the year in February and March, making a lot of mud with the horses and turning around. And this is just 1 week after season, and you can see our impact is still pretty light. Our season ended about 10 days ago, so you just missed it. So all we've done so far is a rough cleanup, and the cleanup job takes a little longer. We actually take the pans out of here and pressure wash them, and that hasn't happened yet, but we have a 4x14 evaporator. It's wood fired. The back pan or the workhorse is raised flue variety, which means that the fire actually goes up between these fins. It just creates more surface area, so you evaporate a lot faster. And we have a kind of a homemade blower underneath the fire to give the fire plenty of oxygen. And when we run the blower, I can put about 250 gallons an hour through this thing. So that helps a lot. We usually gather around between 1,000 and 2,000 gallons depending on the run. Our head tank holds 1,750, so that helps a lot. And that is the new tank we put in this year, and has been a real asset to us. It was made by a local Amish tin shop. It keeps the sap very clean. We're able to wash it out easily. But that was a very good addition, and it saved us. My sugar house was much more cramped before, and with having 1,700 gallons at my ready, I don't have to worry about transferring sap from one tank to another.
How come you don't burn gas?
Because it forces me to clean up the wood. It forces me to keep the woods clean, and I think my grandfather did it that way, so I do it sort of to honor him. But I know that by going out in the woods, culling the trees that need culled, it gives me a perfect place to put them, the blow down stuff, and I don't know, I think mostly because it's all part of the romance. I still gather with horses because my grandfather did it, and I want to pass that on. I built the sugar house first. We actually built the sugar house before we had pans or even knew the size, and this now is just about the perfect size. We can handle pretty easy up to 3,000 taps with no problem. I don't know that we'll grow that big. Here on the farm we can do 1,600. We do boil for a couple other people, and I'd like to see that number double. It's a great time of the year, and it's competing with nothing else, so it's a perfect time to work horses and men.
Is there a social aspect to it, a community aspect to it that you like?
Absolutely. We get a lot of visitors here at the sugar house that time, homeschoolers. We bring children in from the local schools and explain not only woodland stewardship, but the maple process as well. Just to tell you some of the stuff we use our woodlot for, not only maple syrup production and lumber, which is the obvious choice. This is a strip of shagbark hickory, and I dry this down and then break it into small chips, and we use that for smoking when we make our bacon and hams and so forth. And it grows right here. Along the edges of our farm, there's bordered in these white pines, and the government came along and said to a bunch of older farmers, hey, if you guys plant these white pine seedlings, there'll soon be a market and be a great retirement income for you. But they never got the market going, and they never showed the farmers how to thin the white pine stands. So what we have are, a lot of these older farms have these areas of white pines growing. Well, for me, I use it like a woodland savings bank. Anytime I need a building project or lumber for a building project, I just harvest these trees, the horses and I, and have them sawed into whatever lumber we're making. If you look at this big tree I'm about to walk up to, the top is gnarly and twisted, so there's not a lot of timber or log lumber in it, but the size makes up the difference. And I don't always take the biggest ones. I thin them what makes sense, so that we wind up with some of these old ones staying and a smaller ones going, that we get more growth out of them that way. It also adds to the diversity. Like I told you, we manage a farm for wildlife, so this makes a great place. And that being said, I leave the hawthorns and the old apple trees growing in amongst them. Even grapevines, though I detest them. I leave a few for the raccoons and the wild birds. Here's a classic example of this area right here tends to run off. And if you notice, any water that comes has to come through a 40-foot lane of grass, comes through the leaf litter, comes through here where it's slowed down each time, eventually crosses my sap road and into a bunch of rubble that I put there. So before the water can actually enter the stream, it's virtually clean. Most all of our little streamland rivulets that you'll catch going across the farm are nothing but clear water. It doesn't happen by accident, but it's not hard to do if you care.
In addition to protecting the waterways, you're also protecting your soil.
Exactly. That's the other thing is, what amendments I do put on, I don't want them to wind up out there. It's much more advantageous for me to have them stay put. And that being said, we try to apply manure when it makes sense and not when it's rainy and snowy and all the bad times. We're trying to get the most bang for our buck, and it's paying off. When we moved here, all this field, there's 40 acres up there. I had a team of horses and a steer, and I had barely enough grass for them for one season. And now we have upwards of 60 head during the summertime with no problem feeding everybody, plus their winter feed, growing all the horses' feed for the year, and all the straw we use here on the farm. Just 2 times we used the tractor to pull the sap tank, and you can see the effects the wheeled vehicle had versus the paths we were just walking down that have had nothing but horse traffic. I can fix it. It's just a lot more effort required to keep them in good shape and get them back in good shape. This is a little odd-shaped field, and I have spelt planted in it. Spelt is a big grain for us, and what I mean by that is it's very important in my farms, the way we do things here. The spelt grain provides a horse feed, and I usually grow enough for an entire year. And not only do we get the grain, but then the spent plant, we get all the straw. And the straw, it goes into my compost and provides a carbon source. That being said, I don't lose very many nutrients out the manure. I'm able to break it all down so that it comes to the field plant ready. Makes for good neighbors. You can see I live kind of close to houses, and I don't want to smell manure. I don't think they should have to smell manure. So with the exception of just a couple days a year, we have just a little bit of smell, and that's minor. The only fresh manure we spread is on the few days when we're hauling the compost. We don't set that aside, we just take it out too. But most all of it's composted 6 months or more, and it's worked out very well for us. People worry about my phosphorus levels because I use manure. Well, I'm not using raw manure, I'm using composted manure, and I'm following my heaviest application. First comes corn, and then comes a grain crop. The grain crop balances out the phosphorus. So even though we have a nutrient management plan here, mostly in place in case we would need it, we haven't ever needed it. And for me, the proof's in the pudding. like I said, it'd be like having a tractor and growing your own gasoline. It works out well for us on our small farm. The beautiful thing about spelts, it's non-competing. I'm not in the fields in the wet and muddy times of spring, like right after making maple syrup or lambing. We typically plant the end of September, at the latest the 1st of October, and we harvest right after first cutting mid-July. So on my cold clay soils, it's perfect because I'm not on them when it's wet and compacting. Even though the horses compact a lot less than a tractor does, it's not a concern at all because of the time of year that we're on it. And the fact that it's non-competing with other farm jobs, it just fits our plan. Works very well, and it has been, without question, one of the best things we've done in the 25 years we've been here is include this crop. So much, in fact, I think if we didn't have draft horses, I would still do it for the straw and sell the grain as a cash crop. This field is planted a fescue and red clover. I see it as being permanent pasture for a few years, and it's low. You look in the very center, there's a sod waterway we have in there. So that fescue makes a really good root base and can stand up to the cattle traffic longer. The clover obviously supplies nitrogen for the growing hay, and it just makes it well balanced. My horse pastures are usually timothy and trefoil, sometimes medium red clover in there just because I like the diversity and the bees like the flowers. That works out pretty well. And you get a little more out of your second cutting, which the horses don't eat anyways. So it works out well for us. This is my power forecart. It's modeled after a friend of mine, Jonathan Lawton. He built the first one, and then he built this one with a few slight improvements on his. It has a 35 horse, or about a 35 horse Wisconsin 4-cylinder air-cooled engine. It has electric hydraulics so that I don't have to hear the motor running if I'm just using the 3-point hitch or the rear wheel steering. I'm able to just use the battery for those things. It has 540 PTO, and so it can run anything on my farm that the tractor can run. It has dual remote hydraulics, so I can lift the rear wheel or the rear door of the round baler, and just about anything you'd use dual remotes for. It would work on my disc as well. However, my disc is a 10-footer, and I just let that be a tractor job for now. It may change down the road, but for now it's very good. I like the idea of the remote because you're not always perfect when you're backing up. So this gives me the power to move my hind end around or run offset. Like when I'm running the baler, I can run the wheels over and the horses over and get in the windrow easier. Let's see. Also, my 3-point hitch is pretty handy. It allows me to use any piece of farm equipment that I have and opens up a whole world because the aftermarket stuff for 3-point hitch equipment is readily available and pretty easy to get a hold of. And if you don't mind a little bit of work, you can pick it up fairly reasonable at farm sales. Where horse-drawn equipment is either real expensive or becoming that way. So this gives you another option. It may not be for everybody, but it works well for me because it gives me the versatility to switch from tractor to horsepower with just a few pins. We also made kind of a weird design on the front tongue. By pulling these pins, I have another piece that hooks on here and immediately moves my tongue over, and I can go to 3 horses in 10 or 15 minutes. Currently it's set up for a team, and we'll just be using 2 on the manure today. I'm using a 125 bushel Peckway manure spreader. The reason I have a power manure spreader versus having a ground drive is we depend a lot on doing our compost. So if I run out of room in my composting structure, I can take this out on the corner of the field and run it off into a pile. I much prefer working from the pile, even though I got to handle it twice. I know that the manure is better off that way going on to my fields. So far we haven't had to use it only one season, and it was a short time, but it definitely saved our bacon. When you get everybody up here on the feedlot in the wintertime, you make a lot of manure. So it's good to have a second option. 125 was just, I wanted the rear beater because I load with the skid steer, and that was a good option because I can load it kind of high. This is a fairly light load, however, it's real heavy. It's dense. It has wood chips, straw, manure, of course, and some sawdust in it. And then it's been composting since last October. So there's quite a bit of weight here. Careful. Gee. Gee. Get over there. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Ha. Ha. Whoa, back. Back. Whoa. What are you doing that for today? Get over here. Back up. Back. Back up. Back. Whoa. Good boy. Back. Back. Haas. Back up. Back up. Whoa. Whoa. Kind of got to be safe doing this, even though I'm not too worried about them. You just never know when something's gonna make them jump or whatever. Best not to be in the way. Get over a little bit. Ooh. And so starts the orchestra. Ah. Gee. Whoa. Whoa. Get up. Get up. Easy.
Ralph has been a frequent contributor to Rural Heritage magazine. Last year, he combined over 60 of his stories and essays into a book called Cultivating Memories. We're proud to include this book in our catalog. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.